Welcome to the Theta Oilfield Services Rod Pumping Optimization video podcast. This is John Zvinos. The following podcast is a presentation given at the 2009 Southwest Petroleum Short Course in Lubbock, Texas.
We've been talking about how to optimize how you're lifting fluids to the surface. We've been talking about whether you ought to run the pumping unit clockwise or counterclockwise, and don't overload the rods, pump slippage. We've covered a lot of things, but we really haven't talked about what we're there for. We're there to remove fluids out of the reservoir. And whether you have an ESP or a sucker rod or plunger lift, whatever you have, that's your job there, is to efficiently produce the well, and that means looking at the reservoir and making sure that you're keeping the pressure at a minimum. The lower you keep the pressure down at the bottom of the well, the better fluids are going to come in. Whatever pressure you have available, whatever reservoir pressure that is out in the reservoir can only push, and so it's going to push it if the wellbore pressure is less than that. And so that's what my subject is. Most reservoir analysis is performed with acoustic liquid level instruments, and it's because they're cheap. I mean, that's the main reason. They're cheap, and it's an easy way to go test a whole lot of wells. And it's a lot cheaper than running equipment in the well, like a pressure gauge down at the bottom of the well. It's a lot cheaper than doing that. And probably some well that you've got problems with right now and you want to go out and test, it probably doesn't have any way there to test to see how efficiently that you're removing fluids out of the reservoir. And you might be doing it at 50% efficiency. You might be getting 50% out of the reservoir that's capable of giving up. You might be getting 95%. And I personally, when I walk up to a well, my job is to get over 95% of what the reservoir is capable of giving up. That's my job there. I may see the motors running backwards and turning the pumping unit backwards. I may see a whole lot of other things, but that's really my job there. People look at this job in different ways. If you have a lot of experience in an area, you may know that if you have a little bit of fluid above the pump, that it really doesn't hurt the well production. That you've had 300 or 400 feet of fluid above the pump, you've pulled the well and you just threw the company's money away because you really didn't help it. And then in other areas, you may find that 300 feet of fluid over the pump really hurts you, and you can get another 50% production. And so some people just want to run a simple fluid level instrument and measure how much liquid's over the formation, and they have experience in that area and in that particular field, and they can say, well, hey, when I have a lot of fluid above the formation, then it's hurting my production. And by a lot of fluid, the number might be 500 feet, it might be 2,000 feet, it might be 3,000. So that's one way people use instruments. And a lot of them use strip chart recorders where they measure the distance to the liquid level by generating an acoustic pulse at the top of the well. That pulse goes down the well and comes back up, and they can count the number of joints to liquid level in the well. So they get a pretty accurate measurement, plenty accurate measurement of where the liquid level is. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There are a lot of people that do that. There are other people that when they test the well, they would like to know more information about it. They might want to know, I wonder how much gas is coming up the casing annulus because I need a cheaper way to produce this well, and I might want to put plunger lift on it. It might be suited to that, and they can measure the gas flow rate up the casing annulus and determine whether it's a good prospect to do that with. They might want to measure the liquid level and correct for a gaseous column. A lot of wells produce gas in the reservoir with the liquid, and it bubbles from the bottom of the well up through the casing and bubbles up through the liquid and makes it stand up 1,000 feet high. If you go to the boss and tell him, hey, I got 1,000 feet of fluid in this well, he'll say, hey, why don't you call a pulling unit and get rid of that? You know, fix whatever's wrong and get rid of that. But there's a lot of gas blowing through there, and that gas kind of bubbles up through that liquid and makes it stand up high. You have 1,000 feet of liquid in the well, but it's 80% gas. And it's only 200 feet of liquid. If you'd grab the gas and pull it out of there and divide 200 feet by 3, that's the gradient of oil, then you got a bottom hole pressure of like 100, 150 pounds, and if your reservoir pressure is 2,000, it won't hurt you at all. So 1,000 feet of fluid in that well won't hurt you at all. And they want to know that. They want to know how efficiently. So not only do they shoot the fluid level in the well, they also measure the casing pressure, and they may note how the casing pressure changes, because when you shoot a well, you close in the casing valves, and that gas that's been coming out and going out at the surface, when you close those valves, it doesn't have any place to go, so the casing pressure builds up. You know the volume of the casing annulus, and you can calculate the gas flow rate that way. They want to know the additional information. Long time ago, there's nothing more important in petroleum engineering than a definite knowledge of the pressure at the bottom of an oil well at any existing operating condition, and the relation of this pressure to the pressure within the producing formation. Yet there is information about these pressures than about any other part of the general problem of producing oil. When you walk up to a well, you can't look at it and say the pressure at the bottom of this well right now is 483 pounds. If you figure out how to do it, you can make a fortune. You know, and that's what, when you go there with the fluid level instruments, that's what you're trying to come up with, is you want to see where the liquid is and how much liquid and how much pressure is being exerted at the bottom of the well to keep fluids out of the reservoir. Analyzing a well's performance requires determination of the producing bottom hole pressure and the static bottom hole pressure, and a comparison of the producing to the static. You want the static bottom hole pressure to be as big as it is, but then you really can't control it unless you water flood it or put CO2 in or something. And the only thing you can control is you can try to get the producing bottom hole pressure real low so that whatever reservoir pressure you have will push fluids into the wellbore. And then we got the problem, what we've been talking about earlier, of how do you get those liquids out of the wellbore. We're trying to get them into the wellbore. We're trying to see how efficiently we're producing the well and causing the fluids to come into the wellbore.